Hey, what is up, guys? Shadow Steel here, and welcome back to Railworks Sundays. So it's been a while since I've done an actual episode. Last time I did a special on Train Sim World, and don't worry, there's more on the way for that. Probably will have to re-record it eventually for new audio, but nonetheless, I decided to kind of do another interesting episode. So, on June 17th and 18th of this year, Nickel Pate Road 765 will be pulling an excursion out of Chicago, Illinois, called the Joliet Rocket. I decided for Railworks to kind of create my own version of the scenario, called the Racetrack Rocket. This is kind of a fictional scenario, though, because of the fact that the scenario, the 765 will never probably pull a train out of Chicago Union Station, as the primary tracks are actually underground. But this scenario is actually split into three parts, with the first part being more of a switching-based scenario. And it actually is kind of a nice change of pace, but unfortunately, for those outside of the United States, you're not going to be able to play this. The scenario itself requires a lot of BNSF content, which is not available outside the United States due to licensing. I did I'm going to do a workshop showcase in the near future to kind of showcase a lot more about the three-part scenario in detail, and to kind of give people an interesting look at what is in store. And nonetheless, it's actually going to be quite interesting. This is actually one of the first three-part scenarios that I'm going to be submitting to the workshop. As it stands right now, as of this recording and as of this video, it's not available on the workshop. I still have a few things to iron out, but I guess you can consider this as a test playthrough of the game itself. As you notice, there was already a check mark on the scenario. I already played it earlier when I finally completed it, but as it stands, but unfortunately I had not fully tested it multiple times, and I think what I need to do is actually keep fully testing the scenario just to make sure it works properly for everybody. Good morning, driver. Today you'll be setting up the excursion consist for 765. Make sure the switches are aligned for you to leave the yard. Alright, so we're right here. We can start turning that off, turning that off. So as you can see, we're already BNSF, heavily oriented with BNSF content, with the BNSF SW1500. Also, all trains on the scenario are based off real timetables scheduled by Metra and Amtrak. So you're actually dealing with an active rail yard here. So we got that out of the way. Alright, so there we go. Out of the yard. Okay, there we go. I was wondering why for a second the audio was so quiet, but alright. Huh. So we're at Chicago Union Station. You got the California Zephyr waiting in the wings over there to be pulled into the actual depot. I think I'm actually going to also recreate the scenario for Railworks America. And the Railworks America content will actually not feature the BNSF switcher, but instead a Metra version of the switcher. Because somebody has actually designed has actually reskinned the SW1500 in the Metra scheme. So as you can see, it looks like one train's already about to leave the station, so I'm gonna have to go ahead. Oh, okay. For a second, I was about to press the. If we move over here, I can see in the distance that we got one Amtrak. Either that's Amtrak or Metra that's leaving. No, it's Amtrak. Okay. So for us, our stopping point is just past the signal. For them, they're going to continue on, but see, that's an Amtrak. One thing you'll need for most of these locomotives to work is the actual is actually a set of is the Empire Builder sets, both the Great Northern version and the Amtrak version. This is kind of to help out with scenery objects to some extent, because the P42s that are used on this set are actually on these scenarios are actually the Empire Builder sets. Okay, so let's see See us coming out there. There's the Amtrak locomotive over there. There we are. Move out a little bit. Also, another thing you're going to need is actually the northeast corridors. I feel that I want to highlight both just to be safe. You probably should have both northeast corridor versions on your list to be safe, but at the same time, you might not need to worry too much about them. Alright. Stop here. Oh! We're not... Jeez, it takes us a while to stop. Okay. Keep in mind... Alright, there we go. There we go. Alright, you'll need to ask for permission to enter the main line. This is something I've noticed that might not be working properly, but I haven't asked too much about it. Supposedly, the second signal you come across once you enter the main line here is that signal over there doesn't appear to work properly. So when I actually move and leave this signal here, it supposedly somehow, when I pass this signal, for some strange reason I'm getting a red block here, which is not, and then it says access denied. But as you'll soon see, I don't actually need to worry about that too much. And I'm thinking I'm going to have to explain this a little more on the actual workshop page when I submit it, or even have to ask about it later. But for some strange reason, that signal is not properly working. As I pass it, as I am right now, and I haven't been actually penalized or even removed. I could look in the options after this and see if there is a issue with it, but I don't think there's too much of an issue. Also, that train there, that's part of the City of New Orleans schedule there. So that Amtrak train that you're seeing passing by is part of the City of New Orleans set. Because the City of New Orleans has 3 different trains. One is from the City of New Orleans onward. The other one, the other 2 are set 2 different trains leaving from Chicago Union Station to Carbondale, on the same route as the City of New Orleans, but it just goes from there. Alright, let's head over to Union Station to hook up to the first cut of cars. This is where things actually get kind of tricky, as once you start entering the platforms and stuff, you're actually going to be met with a bit of a complex thing. I probably should turn off the bell for a little bit. So I chose the switcher here. I was originally going to make 2 different versions of the scenario. I was going to have one version where you're using a GP38-2 that's built into the route, so there wouldn't be any real reason to have this locomotive, freeing up some room for people that didn't have some of the BNSF content. Then there was a version that featured this locomotive, the SW1500, and but another version I wanted to actually joke around with and have either a Metra F40PH pull the cars out, or better yet, maybe a BN F45. It would actually cause problems for some content, but not entirely. So once again, you see that the yellow block's there. Red block here, and I'm gonna have to keep an eye on this again. There seems to be signal issues on this particular map per se, because once I pass certain signals, I actually get red blocks that I can't actively pass. But then again, at the same time, some of these issues are quickly passable. All right. Denied again. So, see, and this actually is one of many problems I was having with the scenario to begin with. One particular issue I had with the scenario was actually to try and get the actual train to hook up to the first set of cars. It turned out that when I was actually creating the consist, when I was actually creating it, the train itself somehow, when I labeled it as empty stock, I thought it transformed the locomotive into a quote-unquote electric multiple unit, which I guess is a typical of Britain's trains. And considering the game was designed in England, Great Britain, I feel that somehow that that particular issue was an issue that they didn't see coming. But originally the scenario was to have you as classified as empty stock to move the train around, and not interrupt traffic too much. Flying. All right, so once we stop here, you can see our first cut's right there. Use the brakes to allow us to get out. Alright, make sure you ask permission to hook up to the cars. Alright, so this, as you can see, you can actually get it approved now. You just apply throttle just enough so you can actually start moving. You don't need to be throttled up too high. Meanwhile, I'm going to move my train over to the cars. As you can see, we are using the California Zephyr set as well. The first Metro train over there is set up, ready to go. I will need to actively, probably, brakes a little bit. Yep. Whoa! Don't need to go that fast, buddy. I feel that maximum speed limit to hook up cars is about 2.5 miles if I remember correctly from the tutorials. So that means I'll have to start slowing down pretty quickly. Alright. So this is actually very different from Train Sim World, because after playing Train Sim World for a little bit, I had to actually get used to some of the controls again. Train Sim World has a lot more controls to use. I actually started finding myself damn it! Oh, there we go. Now that we have our first cut of cars, we'll need to make sure that we'll need to make them look nice. Head over to the car wash to clean these cars. This was something I decided to do kind of jokingly, because there's actually an area on the map that is classified as a car wash. So I decided to kind of mess around with it and have these cars run as a car wash item. So we now have the train running this way, so we can just pull it out of the station. But you have to be very, very careful with this, as for some strange reason, when you're pulling these cars and you actually get to a certain point, the switch will somehow realign itself midway through one of the cars, causing the train to derail. I found out the best way to get around this is to actually kind of push on at track speed, which means I'm getting about 10 miles an hour at least on this long section of the track. But it's something that I've yet to fully figure out, but other than that, there's not much I need to worry about. I think I've delayed this slightly, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have it make it look like, as here, this is essentially what we're doing is going through this track area here. That's a car wash area. We have a problem here where this switch somehow realigns itself immediately. Oop. Keep thinking that escape actually gets me out of the map because it's the key on Train Sim World. So I need to So I need to keep an eye on the switch here. Goofball. My dog's barking. Keep an eye on it. I don't know what is going on with the switch, but I want to say it happened. It happened to me at least once, but so far I haven't had that problem again. But I've only run the scenario twice, so this is actually a problem. I'll keep an eye on them. So again, I have to keep a full eye on this map, because I know that once the switch realigns itself, it's actually realigning itself pretty quickly after the car passes through. Yeah, there it goes. It actually realigned itself with partway through the cars actually moving through. So that was very, very like interesting, because I never had that issue before. So, a word of warning for you guys: keep an eye on that particular instance. Also, it looks okay. Now I need to delay that maybe a little longer. Okay, so it looks like, yeah, this will probably be different finalized wise, but this may actually be slightly longer. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click here, as I know that some of the switches have to be aligned for me to enter the yard. So I need to actually drop them off here, which means that this switch has to be aligned. This switch has to be aligned. That's pretty much it. 14-yard bay. All right. So we had one train leave the yard, so that's good. Like I said before, some of these trains are actually on actual timetable schedules. So certain events will actually happen as if they were part of the actual assignment. So I need to keep an eye on the signals, because I don't know exactly what we're dealing with. So as you can see, we got the California Zephyr, the Pooch Pack, as part of our consist. So this is part of the Pooch. Got more California Zephyr, the Empire Builder, like I said. This car in particular, these Union Pacific cars, are actually part of the 844. So you'll need the 844. The Union Pacific Smoke Box is 844, which is in my opinion, a required DLC nonetheless, because there's no reason you shouldn't have Smoke Box's classic 844. Let's get the train moving. Once again, get in here. And that's the Metro yard. We got Metro servicing facilities there. Amtrak servicing facilities here. Yep. I pressed shift for some reason. I don't know what it did. Now, originally, what I was gonna do in the scenario is I was actually gonna have the train, like, drop off the two sets of cars on either set of like yard points, because there was no way it was gonna initially fit on the single track track. But what I ended up doing officially was actually going ahead and putting them on separate. And then what I was gonna do after that, I was actually gonna have in a position where once they were like set up on either switch, they were going to actually be combined to like a full consist, and from there the switcher was either going to pull them out to the upper track, because I know for a fact that the G-Track simulation version of the S-2 Berks are very, very underpowered, so it actually working with them is a pain in the ass. Alright, so I put the handbrakes on these two cars. I'm actually going to have to double check the track alignment. I'm doing okay line-wise. Alright. So, unhook. Alright, now we need to pick up the next cut of cars out of Union Station. There we go. So, we're going to be going to the... Now, like I said, I was going to actually have the switcher kind of combine the sets and then pull them up to the upper tracks up here, because there's actually a very steep grade once you leave Union Station. And I know that the S-2 Berk is really underpowered. I've seen videos of, in particular, Fan Railer's videos where he's actually used 765 on excursions over Charlotte Hill, and that particular route is and that particular route itself is actually is very steep. There's a 1.5% grade on the westbound slope and a 8% on the eastbound. This almost gets to that same 1.5% gradient out here, and he had trouble with I think it was a 12-car consist with one Berk, and that was with the 844's own passenger consist. So he was struggling out of the gates. I think he actually stalled by the end of that video. But nonetheless, we're already entering the gradient here, so whoop, there we go again. So I don't mind this locomotive. It's a very basic locomotive, to say the least, but at the same time, I need to pull the train stop. So now our now speed limit changes to 15 by the looks of it, if we go that way, but we're not. If anything, we're going to be going through the running track over here. This will actually give us a good view of 765 as well, because she is actually one of the few locomotives you'll be passing. So we'll be going through the running track, then we'll be going through the north lead, which is over here, which means we'll need to switch this. And after that, it doesn't look like we'll need to worry too much about switching because it's mostly automatic. Alright. I just need to apply throttle just a little bit so we can get our locomotive moving. Okay. This is where the gradient gets problematic. There's our locomotive, 765. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a screenshot a little bit. All of these locomotives in the area. Got Metra. Also note the Metra logo on my locomotive here. That is not included when you get the Chicago Racetrack. What the funny thing is that to actually get the Metra logos on any rolling stock, of all of the rolling stock here, you actually need a mod from Railworks Americas. Other than, if you don't actually have the ability to run any of these. You don't have all the Metra signage and logos. Amtrak logos stay put, but all BNSF and Metra logos are different. There we go. There we go. I'll just let it run away. Not exactly what I wanted, but oh well. There's our locomotive. So that's our train. As you can see, we also have an auxiliary water car, i.e. tank car, fully loaded. It's got the fully loaded version of it. And the tool car, which is a BN F45 set. So, like I said, a lot of that is actually going to be problematic for those if you're the tank car is actually from this route, so there's not going to be much of a need to actually find another piece of DLC for that. But the box car, I could probably interchange it with something from the American Asset Pack, but at the same time, I know that's also going to be a problem. So, get that going. Oh, god damn it. Son of a bitch. Dumb dog. So there's our contest that we just brought in. Once again, we're going to have to do the same trick again with the second cut of cars. However, that set of cars, unlike that set of cars actually goes on right here, which means we'll need to make sure you ask for permission to collect the next cut of cars. Now, this is actually something I needed to do because that was the last point visibly to do that. Because there's a handful of like permission things you need to give or ask for. All you need to do is click that, and that's it. So there we go, approved. So also keep in mind that all track entrances and exits are actually quote unquote approved and disapproved constantly. So as I said, this is one of those things that you need to be very careful of long term. Oh, god damn it. I don't think there's much of a problem for going 15 miles an hour because this is a standard scenario, so there's not much of a point deduction. But if you want to do this correctly and see all of the trains that are running, you'll need to be quote unquote aware of everything that's going on, which means you'll have to be going at the right speed. If I look at the map here, I believe... Okay, that's another thing that I didn't see coming. Okay, so if I look up here, I believe... Yeah, Metro Train 1303 will leave eventually. And actually, I think there's another train inbound very soon. I think the next train actually... Okay, actually, the Metro Train is supposed to leave now. Normally, the Metro Train, number 1303, actually leaves at 10... or 8:40, but there was a issue timetable-wise. For some strange reason, the track speeds and stuff are sort of glitched out for the scenario. So when you actually start so when you actually have the locomotive, quote unquote, running out of the starting point at the time it's supposed to, you actually have the train running late at certain points. So if I go here. Okay, so I guess Metro doesn't leave just yet. I thought there was a train that left at 36, but it might be a different locomotive. I'll have to check. Okay, so there's no permission that needs to be given yet. Also, this is actually true to the actual scenario itself in real life. BNSF actually runs their certain units in and out of Chicago Union Station as they properly own trackage rights for Metra. So all Metro trackage is actually on a loan purchase, like a run lease or something or other. So there's occasions, because Metra is partially owned by BNSF or something like that. And what actually happens is that you actively need to, like, there are points where BNSF locomotives can be used for Metro trains for, like, in an emergency situation. So say Metra diesel has broken down, so this P40 broke down. Let's say that happened. Well, BNSF can step in and actually have one of their GEVOs or any of their mainline locomotives, which are capable of high speed running, to pull the locomotive out of the yard and pull the Metro train out. This actually is a very good thing. I guess this is actually kind of interesting because this actually has happened a few times. BNSF has had to actually step in with Metra and pull their locomotives in and out of the yard. Okay, so I'm going to pull in brakes a little bit. I am going way too fast. trying to get a good screenshot of these two locomotives, because I know that one of them actually leaves them. Alright. What I'm going to do here is actually get a good screenshot. I'm getting a lot of these screenshots for the workshop page eventually, but as it stands right now, there's not much I need to do. Right, so we're going to clear one ahead, so I'm going to have to pull these out. So if you haven't noticed, this is actually the front of the train, and I've actually taken some care and actually took screenshots of all the cars in order, just to make sure that the train is like properly numbered and properly like assigned. And a lot of the cars are actually the same kind of cars that are seen on 765 and 611's actual consists. There's a full-length dome in the Empire Builder set for the the actual Empire Builder. The Great Northern Empire Builder that actually is used today by, though it is owned by Iowa Pacific, it's the same car, almost, to some extent. So, curiously enough, I actually went ahead and used the Empire Builder's full-length dome in a similar fashion. So, I'm actually kind of curious. Another train was supposed to leave, or either leave or enter the station at this point, but I don't see it. I wonder if it's Amtrak, because I think there's an Amtrak train. Oh! Alright, now, okay. So once again, I have to delay this to about maybe a minute or so, because this is not supposed to happen until you get like partway through the car wash. And this is actually kind of something I wanted to try out. Alright, I'm gonna quickly... I have to apply throttle a little bit so I can actually get the damn train out of the damn switch. Alright, well, god damn it, center on player. You keep an eye on the cars. God damn it. Stop doing that. Okay, interesting. So the switch actually realigns itself only when the locomotive is, only when the locomotive is required to go through that path. So the realignment thing might be an issue, might actually be an interesting little issue for only a handful of people. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and actually pop my camera over here. That way we can actually get a good shot of the train quote unquote being cleaned. There we go. That's supposed to be representative of the quote unquote Northern Pacific dome car that was seen on a handful of contests. So you'll also notice that a lot of the cars are from the California Zephyr set, but again, that's mainly because of an issue that is only available for that is not that. Interesting. I've never heard a tire squeal. That was very interesting. I think that was because of the Amtrak car that's right here. It's either Amtrak or the California Zephyr car that was causing that noise. And that's curious because it's coming from this area right here on the train. But the California Zephyr and the Amtrak train are actually, quote-unquote, actually causing tire squeal, which is actually kind of interesting. I've never heard that. So anyway, like I said, the California Zephyr cars, except for the dome car at this end, are actually supposed to be representative of the Norfolk Southern equipment, because unfortunately, Dovetail has not gotten Norfolk Southern passenger equipment. And this is kind of understandable because of licensing. A lot of people think that the reason that the DLC for Dovetail is so expensive is not just because they want to nickel and dime you out of everything, but that's not actually the case. In reality, the reason that Dovetail content, especially with Train Simulator, is so expensive, hell, Train Sim World is essentially a $40 DLC route that's a standalone game, is actually because of licensing. Keep in mind that all locomotives are part of, all the DLC they release is all part of a brand name. So BNSF, Union Pacific, CSX, Norfolk Southern, all of them are part of brands that honestly need money to be sold, to actually be bought and sold. Alright, so here we go. Got that done. Alright, so I'm gonna put that on. Yeah, so I'm gonna put the handbrakes on these two. That's interesting. One train is not leaving. Unless. Suppose there's a 10 o'clock, there's a 10:40 train, and it's either one leaving? No. As you can see, there's some trains going in and out, but none of them are. It doesn't look like any of them are active. That's interesting. I'll go ahead and look into the game again to double check. But oddly enough, this train was supposed to leave by now, and then the other Amtrak train was the last train that actually passed at the end of the scenario. So that's very, very curious, to say the least. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and look at the alignment. Switch aligned is proper. Alright, so the only switch that's not aligned is this one. Go. So, South Lee, right? That's the one we need to go. Okay, there we go. Go ahead and unhook. Okay, now that we have everything settled down, take our switcher to the crew change point. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to release the brakes and then start applying. Sound the horn 3 times and we're off on our journey. Also going to have to double check on signals. This also is one of the first and only times you actually get a look at inside this area. It's actually have the switcher go through the actual facilities here rather than the running track, to kind of play around with to kind of give people an interesting look at what I did over here, because this is mainly the main area you'll be seeing throughout the entire scenario. Is this content here? So I'm gonna go ahead and there we go. So no switch needs to be pulled off yet. So like I said, that's actually quite a kind of an interesting design choice there. So also scenario time, depending on what you do, like how fast you run the scenario or if you know what you're doing, you actually can get this done relatively quickly. It's not a hard scenario per se, it's just you gotta pay attention, because everything around you is you're actually running on mainline trackage as a switcher, which is very rare. So certain your position on the main line is very, very dangerous. Go. We'll now be here for a little bit. I'm gonna put this. I'm gonna click this. And now that we go via Car Shop 7, which is right here. I'll switch that line. Watch that line. So now our car stops. Release the brakes. Just let the brakes release themselves for a little bit and actually kind of let the train coast downhill for a little bit. We're on the 0.9% grade, so that's going to be... There we go. Sounds like... I can hear a rumbling of another locomotive nearby. I can see a headlight, too. Aha! There it is. So that is train... That's train 58 of Amtrak. Part of the, I think, the city of New Orleans. There we go. As you can see there, the city of New Orleans is pulling through. Now, I kind of messed around with this. I probably am aware that the Amtrak train does not actually... The train I designed for the Empire Train 58 is not going to fully fit. But then again, it's also one of those things that is actually kind of fun if you think about it. So we need to go through the yard lead, right? Yard lead, yep. Which is right there. Have to apply throttle. So this is also one of the only times you'll actively go through the quote-unquote the facilities here. But if you're actually curious, to save up on the amount of like polygon, like lag issues that you're probably going to have with this, I decided to use the high detailed models outside the car shop. But once you get inside, you'll notice that a lot of the content is lower polygon content. And and this is mainly because I wanted to make sure. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, let me double check the signal. Oh, that's why. Okay, so as you can see, that there's only, I think, one instance where the low polygon model actually pops out, and that's right about here. Oh no, those are full detailed models. But this is actually one of those little interesting scenarios I had designed. It's I think short-wise, it's 45 minutes. But if you want to see all the trains leaving in and out of the yard, out of the station segments, try and actually slow it down to where I think 9 o'clock is the last train you'll see entering in and out of Chicago Union Station, and that is the Metro train. As you can see, there we're actually keeping pace with the Amtrak train over there. I'm going to go ahead and zoom far away. Go. So again, this is like the last points. This is also kind of interesting because some of the trains I don't have running on the same track, but at the same time, I actually wanted to do something where all the trains were kind of running into each other. So I'm actually kind of excited to see how this scenario works for you guys at home, and if you're actually interested. Don't worry, the next two parts that I will showcase on this game is actually going to be coming on the days of the excursion. Or rather, the last part will be on June 18th, 2017 is when I will showcase the last part of this combined video of parts 1 and 2 of this scenario. And that video is going to be kind of long. So the next time you'll see this scenario is going to be officially, I want to say it's going to be one part, but I also feel that there's actually going to be a chance where it might be more than one, because I don't know how long each scenario will take, because I'm designing the scenarios based off the quote-unquote, oh boy, emergency! Jesus! I almost derailed myself. Alright. So, the reason this one's a little longer is to kind of represent the so-called crew change. There we go. Last picture. There we go. You've done a great job today. Another crew will finish up from here. Final destination reached. So there you guys have it. If you do all right, you will take about 45 to 42 minutes at a high pace, but I've increased it enough where total time, like I said, going into the standard room, you can actually see that it says 85. That's double what you're going to need, but I think I might go in later and say they will take a little shorter. Also in the workshop page, I will show the timetables of each trains and show off when each train leaves and which train passes you. As you can see, there are two other scenarios I'm working on currently. The second part of Racetrack Rocket is going to be featuring 765, but I'm gonna make it so it actually works partially with what I like to say is the non-upgraded version, because there's a mod I used before of 765 which I actually upgraded the physics to the actual version of 765. However, I'm going to probably try it out with G-Track's original specs, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it because the first segment of the scenario actually has you pulling out of a 1% or higher grade out of the yard. And I know that even with the physics mod installed, I actually had a tough time getting her out. Also, if you notice, the Dinky Parade up here is actually featured on this list, and I actually am trying to finish that up. I'm actually designing the scenario based off the 90s. So a lot of the content in there is going to be featuring BNSF content, very few Metra content, but, here and there. So, naturally, guys, I'm excited for the Joliet rocket. Hopefully, I'll get some good insight. Maybe I'll even go and chase it down in June, but I don't have high hopes. Leave a comment down below. Subscribe if you want more. Oh, and I will keep you up to date. Eventually, maybe make an update video of the scenario to tell when the scenario is on the workshop, so you can download it for yourself. But I am very sorry for you guys outside of the United States, out of the 50 states, as you won't be able to play any of these scenarios on the racetrack, as unfortunately it just doesn't want to work. Like I said, like and comment down below, subscribe if you guys want more, and I'll see you guys later.
This summer, the mythic steam locomotive returns to the Windy City with a passenger train rocketing straight out of history. It's the Joliet Rocket. Passengers will delight at the high-speed running between Joliet and Chicago, arriving to a special VIP event at LaSalle Street Station with live entertainment, a spread of vintage cocktails, inspired appetizers, and more. This red carpet event runs Saturday, June 17th and Sunday, June 18th. Travel aboard the Joliet Rocket would be a perfect Father's Day gift or memorable adventure for families, railroad fans, young adults, and more.